They thought the old man was confused. They thought his worn-out ID was a joke, until the sirens on the base suddenly changed tone. And in that frozen moment, every guard realized they had underestimated the wrong man. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The morning had started like any other at Fort Aldridge, a sprawling U.S. military base tucked between miles of desert wind and sun-bleached hills. The guards on duty were halfway through their shift, restless from the dry heat, joking among themselves to break the monotony. That was when they saw him. An elderly man, leaning heavily on a cane, walked slowly toward the main checkpoint. His shoulders were broad despite his age, his steps steady, deliberate. His jacket, an old, faded bomber, fluttered slightly in the breeze. Something about him carried a weight that didn't quite match the hunched frame, but the guards didn't notice that. They noticed the outdated military ID hanging from his neck. "Hey, sir, you filming a movie or something?" one of the younger guards called, grinning as he approached. "This ID is older than my dad." A few of the others chuckled. The old man didn't smile. He simply handed over the ID, eyes unreadable, face calm in a way that almost felt out of place. "That's real," he said quietly, but the guard just smirked. "Sure it is. And I'm the Secretary of Defense." The old man's jaw tightened. Dust swirled around his boots as a strong gust of wind rolled in. Something in his expression shifted, not anger, not fear, but a sadness he carried like a shadow. He had come here for a reason, and he knew this moment would not be easy. Behind him, a few base workers had slowed to watch. People sensed something unusual, though they couldn't quite say why. The desert air seemed heavier, thicker, as if the atmosphere itself felt the tension rising. "Look," the guard said, holding the ID between two fingers like a questionable coupon. "These IDs were discontinued decades ago. You're telling me you're still active? Or what? Some kind of legend?" The old man didn't answer. Instead, he drew in a long breath, steadying himself. "I'm here to see General Hawthorne. It's urgent." At the mention of the general's name, the laughter died. A few heads turned. General Hawthorne was not someone you joked about. Yet the guard shrugged it off, puffing up his chest. "General Hawthorne doesn't meet random walk-ins. Especially not." He looked the old man up and down. This a few bystanders murmured. One woman whispered, "Why doesn't someone just run his name?" Another man shook his head. "Maybe he's a veteran. Show some respect." But the guards weren't listening. They didn't see the way the old man's hand trembled faintly, not from weakness, but from the effort of holding back everything he wanted to say, everything he had carried for years, everything he had sacrificed. He finally looked the guard in the eye. "My name is Samuel Cole, and if you understood what that meant, you wouldn't be speaking to me like this." A ripple went through the small crowd. That name meant nothing to the guards, but to a few older civilians nearby, it clearly meant something. One whispered, shocked, "No way, Samuel Cole. He's supposed to be." They didn't finish, because at that exact moment, the base sirens blared. Not the standard checkpoint alarm, not the medical emergency alert. This was the red-coded top-secret clearance alarm, activated only when a classified individual or threat breached the perimeter. Every soldier froze. Every civilian turned toward the sound. The guards stared at the speaker above the gate as a computerized voice echoed across the base. "Priority alert. Clearance Phantom 01 detected at main checkpoint. All senior command report immediately." Everyone went silent. Phantom 01, a code name almost no one had ever heard, because it belonged to one man. The man standing right in front of them. The guard with the ID in his hand swallowed hard. His fingers shook. For the first time, he really looked at the old man, not as a joke, not as an inconvenience, but as someone far above his pay grade. I don't understand," he whispered. "You weren't supposed to," the old man replied. Moments later, the heavy metal doors of the inner gate clanged open and a convoy of black SUVs rolled out in perfect formation. Soldiers in high security uniforms jumped out, lining up instinctively, crisp, coordinated, every movement sharp as a blade. At the center, a tall, stern-faced man stepped forward. General Hawthorne. He marched with purpose, eyes laser-focused on the old veteran. The guards braced themselves, expecting anger, maybe punishment. But instead, Hawthorne stopped a feet from the old man and saluted. A full, deeply respectful, unwavering salute. "Sir," Hawthorne said, voice resonating with something close to reverence. "Welcome back." Gasps spread through the crowd. A few civilians covered their mouths. One of the guards nearly dropped his rifle. Samuel Cole returned the salute, though slower, with the weight of decades behind it. "You got my message then," he said. Hawthorne nodded grimly. We received fragments of an encrypted transmission, enough to know you were coming, but not enough to know why. The old man exhaled, and for the first time, his age seemed to show, not in weakness, but in burden. There's a threat, he said, bigger than anything Aldridge has seen, and it's coming sooner than you think. A heavy silence fell. Even the wind seemed to pause. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. The same men who had mocked him now stood like children caught misbehaving in church. Shame rippled through them, visible and raw. The old man looked at them, not with anger, but with something far heavier, disappointment. I understand, he said softly. Young soldiers see an old man and think time has taken everything from him. The guard looked down, throat tight. But Samuel continued, time doesn't erase service. It doesn't erase sacrifice. And it doesn't erase what we stand for. Hawthorne stepped toward the guards, voice low but stern. You're looking at the man who founded the Phantom Recon program, the most classified special operations unit in this country's history. A murmur swept through the crowd like a wave. Samuel Cole wasn't just a veteran. He was a ghost, a legend, a man who had completed missions that would never be written, never known, but had shaped the fate of nations. And he had come here for a reason. General, Samuel said, we need to talk. Privately, lives are at stake. Hawthorne nodded immediately and signaled his officers. The soldiers formed around Samuel in a protective formation, guiding him toward the vehicles. The entire base watched in stunned silence, but just before stepping inside, Samuel paused. He turned back toward the young guards. You have potential, he said to them, but don't let pride blind you. Respect is the first skill every soldier must learn. The guard's voice cracked. Sir, I'm sorry, truly. Samuel nodded once. Good, learn from it. One day you'll be in a position where the stakes are far higher than a checkpoint. And with that, he climbed into the SUV. The doors shut. The convoy moved. The dust rose behind them like a veil. For a long moment, the base stood completely still, as if everyone needed time to process the shift they had just witnessed. A moment when arrogance collided with reality, and reality won. Inside the command building, behind locked doors and sealed windows, Samuel finally revealed the truth. Intelligence he had gathered from sources no one else had access to. Information that would save countless lives. The base mobilized within hours, and the guards who had mocked him, they volunteered for the night shift, not as punishment, but as a way to prove they were ready to grow. Samuel Cole remained on the base for several weeks, guiding, advising, teaching, and every single day, the guards greeted him with the kind of respect that comes not from fear, but from understanding. Because some people earn their titles long before anyone knows their names. Because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back, just like the wind that carried Samuel Cole through that gate, returning him to the place where he was always meant to stand. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories just like this one.